Hi and welcome to my channel. In today's video I'm going to be talking about all things alocasia. We're talking about care requirements, propagation, and I'm also going to be showing you my full alocasia collection. But before we get into the video, hi, my name is Alexis and this is Wild Houseplants. I'm a houseplant enthusiast and I also work as a houseplant technician, which basically means when I'm not looking after my own plants, I'm looking after other people's. If you don't follow me over on Instagram, you can find me there at Wild Houseplants. And if you do enjoy this video today, I'd love it if you hit that subscribe button below. It doesn't cost you anything, but it really helps out my channel. Let's get into the video. So welcome to sunny London. I don't get to say that very much, but it is such a beautiful day here today and I am just so enjoying this. So I'm bathed here in sunlight with my alocasia. What can be better? So alocasia are a genus of rhizomatous plants. They grow from a rhizome and they are native to tropical and subtropical Asia and also parts of Australia. They're part of the Araceae family and they are characterized by these elephant ear shaped leaves, which is why they're often called the elephant ear plant, but they come in lots of different shapes and sizes. They are considered to be more on the fussy side, and that's because they sort of require constant access to moisture and they don't like drying out, and that can make the watering requirements quite difficult, trying to get that balance right between them not being sat in water and then getting root rot and then making sure they've got constant access to water without drying out. So I think that's the thing that they struggle with the most. They can also be quite susceptible to pests, in particular spider mites. So if you do struggle with spider mites, you are probably going to struggle with alocasia. Fortunately, for some reason, I don't know why, I don't struggle that much with spider mites, touch wood. Thrips tend to be more my enemy, but yeah, I don't have that many problems with pests on mine at the moment, so that is all good. I'm going to start by talking you through my collection, and then at the end of the video I'll talk about my care requirements and also talk about propagation as well. Okay, so up first we have the Alocasia zebrina. As you can see, I have quite a few in my collection and I actually have only ever bought 2, and then the rest of these small ones are all grown from corms. So basically Alocasia will produce what's called corms. They're like little bulbs. And basically you can either leave them in there and they will in time sprout themselves, or you can pluck them out and you can actually grow them on and propagate them. And I find that that generally gets them going a little bit faster, so then you can make lots more babies very quickly. But I like to call the Alocasia zebrina the gateway alocasia. This was definitely the first alocasia that I bought. And it's a brilliant one to start with because I do find it's not one of the fussiest ones. So it's more laid back, it's more easygoing, it's readily available. So you can get it in like a lot of local garden centres, even some of the DIY stores are selling these now. And you can pick one up probably around about this size for about 12 to 14 pounds. So you can start your collection off quite, that doesn't cost a huge amount of money. If you wanted to buy one that's this size, it's probably going to cost you more like 40 to 45 pounds, I believe. But this one was much smaller when I bought it and it has just grown over the last maybe 3 years that I've had it. So I'm just going to get these ones to the side here and then I'll talk about propagation with these ones in a minute. So I think I might have to stand up for this one. So you can just see just how fabulous this plant is. And it's characterized by these really beautiful stripy stems and these huge elephant ear leaves. This is actually my favorite leaf. You can see it's actually got some sport variegation, and what that means is it's not stable variegation, but it's just beautiful, and it probably won't, well, it hasn't gone on to the future leaves, but I'm just enjoying it for while it's here. So yeah, like I said in the intro, these can be susceptible to spider mites. So it is worth making sure that you're cleaning your leaves on a regular basis. I use a microfiber cloth, just like this one here, and I will just wipe them down like that. And then I will use a product called SB Plant Invigorator if I want to clean the leaves, and I will link that product down in the description below. But yeah, I do use these, obviously as the leaves get bigger on these plants, they can get a little bit heavy. So I do use these plant stakes just to support the older leaves as they get a bit heavy. It just stops them sort of drooping down, and it supports them just until they're ready to be cut off. Basically, as soon as I start to see yellowing on the leaves, I will probably cut that leaf back, just purely from an aesthetic point of view. Everybody's got their own viewpoint on yellowing leaves. Some people like to leave them on, some people like to cut them off. I'm personally a cut them off crew. So yeah, and then cut them off, and then yeah, I'm absolutely in love with this one. As you can see at the moment, it's got lots of new growth coming. So I've got a new leaf here. This is also a new leaf, just hardening off. New leaf coming in here, and this one is also sprouting a new leaf here as well. So really fantastic. There's actually 2 plants in here. There's actually 3 plants in here. So yeah, I've got 3 separate plants in here. And I would say that obviously if you can buy Alocasia in pairs or in 3s, but really in pairs, you are going to get a much fuller looking pot quicker, because they can take a little bit of time to size up. So I would say my general rule is if something is under £12, then I might probably buy 2 and pop them up together, and therefore you're getting that sort of desired fuller look much quicker. But I think in this case, this one happened to just come with 3 in the pot, and that's why I've got such a lush full display. So yeah, Alocasia zebrina. If you're looking to get into Alocasias, this is definitely a good one to start with. As for these other smaller zebrinas here, this one I actually bought this time last year. I was preparing for getting married, and I wanted to incorporate houseplants into my wedding. So rather than doing a lot of florals for the wedding, I actually chose to decorate with houseplants, and I made my own bouquet out of houseplants as well. And I had some Alocasia zebrina as part of the table displays for the centerpieces. So that's why I bought this one. And then obviously I chopped off all the leaves, which is a bit brutal, and used them for the display. But then I kept obviously the base of the plant, and it's regrown back like this in a year. So yeah, if you're interested in thinking about how using houseplants for your wedding or any kind of occasion, actually, just drop me a comment below and I'd be more than happy to make a video about how I did that. I did my bouquet, the centerpieces. I also did like a sort of an archway at the bottom of the aisle, and what else? Yeah, basically all the display was sort of houseplants. So yeah, so that's that one, and it's grown back. This is one I've grown completely from corms, and it's now starting to size up. Obviously you can see that it would have at one point started just like this, and then they get bigger, and then they get bigger, and then eventually it'll be something like this. And I'll be interested to see how long it takes me to get this to really size up. Unfortunately, I don't have a huge amount of unlimited space with the most amazing light, so some of them definitely get better light than others, and so it takes them a little bit longer to size up. Ideally with Alocasia, if you can get a light source from above, now that's not always possible, but for example, this one lives under a grow light which sits directly above it, and which is why you can see all the stems looking so wonderfully straight and lovely, because it's just growing up towards the light source. If this was next to a window and the light source was here, you would see it sort of slightly growing towards the light like that. So just be cautious about either rotating these plants or, yeah, ideally under a grow light, but it's not always possible. But I love this one. I think it just looks so cute like this. And yeah, really rewarding to know that I've grown that completely from corms. And here's just a little example of some zebrina corms that I'm propagating at the moment. So I always just use perlite. You just put a little bit of perlite into a container like this, insert your corms in, and then just keep the perlite damp but not sitting in water, because if you let it sit in water, you are going to increase your chances of getting sort of mold and things like that. So you just want the perlite to be damp, but you don't want loads of water sitting in here. And then you want to keep it humid. So either put it in a glass cloche, or if you have one of those small like IKEA greenhouses, they work really well as well. Or in those early stages, you can also put, before they've actually sprouted like this one here, you could just put some cling film or something like that over the top. So yeah, I use perlite. I mean, other people use things like fluvial stratum and things like that. I just always had such great success with perlite. I've never sort of looked at anything else. But yeah, they start like this, then go on to this, and yeah, super, super rewarding. And that is why I have so many Alocasia zebrinas. So yeah. Up next, I have my beginner dragon scale and my silver dragon. I'm going to talk about these two together because their care requirements are quite similar, and as you can see, they look very similar. This one is obviously more green, and this one has got more of that sort of silvery blue tone to the leaves, but they are very, very similar in their care requirements. These are called dual alocasias, so they are considered more of those smaller, more compact growth. And the leaves don't generally get to the huge level that you would maybe on something like a zebrina or a regal shield. They do stay more on the small side and more compact. I do find that these ones are generally more pest resistant than the ones with the sort of softer, bigger leaves. These leaves tend to be quite more sort of dense, and I think they're less attractive to the pests. But obviously, just like with the other ones, just keeping an eye on looking on the front of the backs and leaves. Get them in the shower and shower off those leaves regularly just to make sure they stay free of dust and pests. Again, these will produce corms in just exactly the same way. So when you see corms, maybe when you're repotting or something like that, you just can remove those corms from the potting medium and you can grow them on in perlite, just like I did with the zebrinas. So I do have a few baby versions of these ones as well. Let me just grab those. So here are some baby Alocasia silver dragons, this one, that I've grown on from corms. I would say that this one is maybe slightly easier care than the beginner dragon scale. I think this one is slightly more susceptible to root rot, and this one is a little bit, therefore, more easygoing. I'm not entirely sure why that is. That's just been my experience. And this one also, I would say, puts out growth more readily as well. So this one obviously is working on a new leaf at the moment, and all these little smaller ones are actually ones I've grown from corms. So in this case, I've only got one main plant in here, and then I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 little corms that are growing as well, but they're really starting to size up now. And when you do produce more babies like this one, you can obviously add them back into the pot and fill this out. Or you can obviously start a new plant, or you can give them away to friends, or you can take them to plant swaps. So they're really fantastic plants in terms of, like, if you're looking to expand your collection, you might want to swap with somebody else who collects Alocasias, and you can swap your silver dragons for something else that you don't have. So they are really rewarding in that sense. But yeah, I love these two so much. This was probably the second Alocasia I bought after the zebrina. And yeah, I just love these. I'm like, how fantastic those leaves are. They're like abs, you know. And this one, yeah, has just been really rewarding and just given me constant growth. Even throughout the winter, it didn't go dormant. It didn't stop producing leaves. It just kept on popping off. So now it looks so lovely and full, and I just love them both so much. Up next is my Alocasia cuprea Red Secret. And this is probably one of my favourite Alocasias. I also find it one of the most easygoing. Like, it's never given me any grief at all, which, you know, again, touch wood. I get scared saying these things out loud, but yeah, it's really never given me any grief. I would say that over the winter months, it did go dormant. It didn't drop any leaves, but it didn't give me any growth for around about, I'm going to say 5 months. Which is quite long, and none of my other Alocasia went dormant, but this one did. So it just completely stopped growing, and that's fine because it's not like it killed off its leaves or anything like that. Alocasia, can go dormant in the winter. They can actually just drop their leaves altogether. So if that does happen in the autumn and winter months, don't panic. Just cut back on your watering and then start watering it again in the spring, and they should re-pop up again. But yeah, this one just didn't give me any new growth, but in the last month it's given me 3 new leaves. This one here, and this one here. And it's also working on what I hope is another leaf in here. The only thing I would say about this one is it has given me a lot of flowers. These are a flowering genus, so they do produce flowers. The flowers are not anything particularly interesting to look at. I will put a picture on the screen for you here so you can see. They're not particularly beautiful, they're not known for their flowers. If you do get flowers on your alocasia, which they do flower sometimes, I would just cut it off unless you're planning to pollinate it, which is quite complicated, so I don't advise it unless you know what you're doing. Just cut them off and then it will normally reward you straight away with a new leaf. But that flower will take energy away from your alocasia, so it will not be putting out new leaves normally while it's flowering. So yeah, just cut them off and then you'll get lots more foliage instead, which is what we want these plants for. I would say that these ones do definitely get top heavy, so they do need some support with their leaves, otherwise the leaves will, as you can see, get quite droopy. I do need to sort this one out properly with some plant stakes, but for now I've sort of got it taped up like this. But yeah, I would say to get the best looking display for your cuprea, then you do need to provide it with some kind of support. But yeah, I think this is like the total beefcake of the alocasia world, and I just love it so much. And look at these beautiful purple leaves on the back, and when the leaves come in, they're so shiny and beautiful. And I have to say, like, again, of course you can get pests with this plant and you can with any house plant, but I've never had any pest issues with this plant, and this plant's been up in my loft, which recently had a thrip outbreak and it didn't get any thrip. So that's a gold star from me. Up next is this one, which is the Alocasia Yucatan Princess. This is one that my husband picked up for me from B&Q, which is like our sort of, if you're watching from America, it's like our big box store. And yeah, it was in like the discount aisle, and it definitely had spider mites because I could see damage on the leaves. So I cut off any of those damaged leaves. I treated the plant and it's been absolutely fine ever since. It's definitely not my favorite alocasia. I find these darker leaves like less rewarding to look at, but it does have these sort of like pinky stems which sort of remind me of rhubarb, and I do still like it, and it hasn't given me any grief. And it's produced lots of babies, which I've now added back into this pot. So these little smaller ones are corms that I've grown and then put back into the pot. And I've actually had it over the winter months living on my microwave, which is like, doesn't get a huge amount of light. It's sort of north facing in this kitchen. And it's done absolutely fine. So I'm rewarding it this summer by giving it a little bit more growth, giving it more light, which I hope will produce more growth. And I just thought it was time for this plant to get a little bit more TLC. So hopefully over the next few months, over the growing season, we should see some nice new growth on this plant, because it has been a little bit dormant recently, and I think that's just from lack of light basically. So yeah, not my favorite, but still, you know, I don't want to get rid of it. I still like it enough. So yeah, that is that one. Up next is my Alocasia Micholitziana. This is often called the Alocasia Frydek, but the Frydek is actually the variegated version of this plant, which I do have and I will show next in the video. Now this is a bit of a sad story for me, and I feel a bit even just talking about it, but I used to have a very, very big version of this plant. And if you head over to my Instagram, you can see it on one of my pinned posts that this plant used to be absolutely huge. And a couple of months ago, I noticed that it had lots and lots of leaves. It was really full. And I noticed that the new growth was getting a little bit smaller. And so I decided to do a repot. And I decided at that point that I was going to try and separate. There was lots and lots of corms in the pot and lots of different plants. I decided I was going to separate them all out, just leave 2 in this pot and take out some of the babies. And then I also collected, I think, 22 corms, which I've got propagating upstairs in perlite. But when I did that repot, I just messed with the plant too much. I upset it and it basically started just producing all yellow leaves, and I had to cut off a huge number of leaves, and I'm now left with just 3 leaves on this main plant, which is a bit devastating because it was once very, very beautiful and I was very, very proud of it. But I am thinking that I can get it back to that healthy level again. So this one has got a couple of leaves on the way, and I'm taking this up to my loft, which gets lots and lots of bright light, and I'm gonna give it a real boost of light and hope I can bring it back. And then I decided to grow these ones separately, but I don't know why I did that. So I am going to add these back into this pot at some point, along with some of those corms once they've propagated. And I'm hoping in maybe by the end of the summer, maybe by sort of end of August, September, I will have a nice, full, healthy looking Alocasia Micholitziana again. But yeah, it was just one of those things where it's like I just messed with it too much. You know, you can love a plant too much to the point where you actually end up doing it more damage than good, and that's what happened with that one. So yeah, I'm sorry, mate, I'm sorry, but we will get back to full health, I am sure of it. Yeah. Up next is my Alocasia Sarion. This is another plant that I've grown solely from corms. So I did have an Alocasia Sarion that was quite a big one. Again, I can put in a picture of that one, and it got a absolutely terrible spider mite infestation. It's one of the few times that I had spider mites in my collection, and it was just riddled and I couldn't get rid of them, and I treated it multiple times. I tried all the different potions and lotions and I just couldn't get rid of them. And at that particular point in my life, I was just like, I'm done with treating this plant. It was becoming too stressful and I couldn't put it anywhere near any of my other plants. So it was just becoming too much. So I decided to get rid of the plant, but I kept all the corms that were in the soil and I grew them. And now we have this wonderful plant, which is getting bigger and bigger, and the leaves are really starting to size up now and get sort of much bigger in size. And it's just really popping off in growth. So it's been really rewarding. And I have sized it up recently, so it should be fine in this pot now until the end of the summer, if not longer than that. And the only thing I would say about the Sarion is that it is a little bit more pest prone in my experience. I've heard other people talking about the regal shield and how that is particularly prone to pest, and also another one which I put on the screen, which I can't remember the name of right now, and just how pest prone that particular one is. And I would say that this is the case with the Sarion as well. Like I said, the mother plant had terrible spider mite infestation and I just couldn't get rid of it. And this one had had thrips twice in its young life when none of my other Alocasias have. So yeah, I think some types of plants are just more susceptible than others, and that's just the way it is. So sorry, there's music coming from somewhere. I don't know if that's coming up on the camera. It's quite nice music, but I think it's coming from outside. Anyway, so yeah, really rewarding to grow this from corms, and I'm really loving it. And basically the mother plant, this is actually a hybrid or a cross, or I need to think of the right terminology, but the parents of this are the Alocasia zebrina, which I showed you at the beginning, which you can kind of see in the stems, and also the Alocasia Frydek, which you can see, the Alocasia Micholitziana, which you can see very much in the similar leaves, although these ones are velvety and these ones are more sort of waxy, like the Alocasia zebrina leaves. So yeah, really fantastic little plant, and I love it very much, and I'm just showering it really regularly to try and keep it free from pests. Okay, up next is another slightly tragic, but I'm hoping with a happy ending story, which is that for Christmas, my husband bought me this Alocasia Frydek variegata, which has been a wishlist plant of mine for a long time, because the Micholitziana was always such a favourite plant of mine, and this is obviously the variegated version of that. And I'll put a picture in of what it looked like when I first received it. And to be fair, it was winter, so it's probably not the best time to be receiving plants in the post, and Alocasia don't travel particularly well, so maybe there was something already going on with the plant. It's difficult to say, but I think I made it worse by transferring it from soil to semi-hydro a little bit too soon. I should have waited longer for it to acclimate, especially considering the time of year, but I was impatient. And this one had always done so well moving into semi-hydro that I thought this one would be exactly the same. But I think because obviously being winter and it's variegated and just needing so much light and then having too much change going on, I messed with it too much. And it just started dropping leaves all the time. And so it was getting more and more sad. And then recently it's just been giving me white leaves. Now, as beautiful as these white leaves are, they don't have any chlorophyll because they have no green on the leaves. Only the green parts of the leaf will be able to photosynthesize. So although they're very beautiful, they last maybe 1 to 2 weeks and then they die off. And it's been giving me white leaf after white leaf after white leaf. But I recently transferred it into perlite, which is basically my savior when it comes to struggling alocasias. And you can see there's lots of nice healthy white roots in there. So we know we've got a good healthy root system going on. And I just keep this perlite damp with some fertilized water. And I'm pleased to report that our latest leaf has green on it. Ah! And it looks like it's got some really beautiful variegation. So I'm hoping that this leaf will be able to last longer than 1 to 2 weeks. And then I can work on another leaf and get this plant looking somewhat like a plant again, looking nice and healthy again. But when I did end up transplanting this from semi-hydro where it was having issues back into perlite, I did manage to get some corms from the soil, and these are all the little corms that I got, and luckily these all came through with just fantastic, dropping semi-hydro, fantastic variegation from the start. They didn't give me any white leaves, so I was just super lucky with that one. So these are obviously growing, they're going to get bigger. I'm keeping it in a little cloche at the moment just to keep in the humidity until the plant gets a little bit bigger, a little bit more established, and then I will slowly acclimate it into normal room humidity. And then the plan is that one day I'll be able to rejoin these back together and have a nice full looking Alocasia Frydek variegata. That is the plan. So maybe at the end of the summer, I'm hoping it might look like a much better situation than it does now. That's the plan anyway. And then I just have another little group of sort of mixed Alocasia here. This is well, I call it Alocasia cuculata, but I'll put the name on the screen because I'm not sure I ever pronounced that correctly. It's just quite a small little cute one. Yeah, I don't have too much to say about it. It's just another little Alocasia in my collection. And then I have, this was like a random corm that I propagated and I wasn't sure what it was. But again, I'll put the name on the screen because it's just left my mind at the moment. But that's working on a new leaf and it's got little sprouting leaves down here as well, which is good. I have a little Alocasia Jacqueline. This was obviously small plant when I got it, so it does take a little bit of time to size up. I also keep this one in a cloche because I do find that it is not, although in time when they're bigger they can tolerate normal room humidity, mine's just not that happy in normal room humidity at the moment, so I'm keeping it inside a cloche. And then I've just got a mixed selection of little corms here. I thought this one might be a cuprea one because I knew I had a cuprea one, but it's looking more and more, I don't know, maybe it is the cuprea. I won't know, I think, until it starts to mature a little bit more. And then I just have some little corms from this plant here, little cuculata, what I call cuculata ones. And again, all propagating in perlite, and I just add in a little bit of fertilized water every now and then just to keep the perlite damp. But again, you don't want it sitting in water because you don't want that rotting or creating mold and things like that. You do get algae in your perlite. It's absolutely harmless. All I would say is obviously the more bright light you're providing, and this is literally sitting a metre back from a south-facing window, the more light you give it, the more likely you're going to get algae. And this is the same for like water props or perlite props or anything. And yeah, I don't worry about it at all. It's never hurt any of my cuttings or plants. So yeah, I just let it get on with it until I'm done with the perlite. And then obviously when I pot it up, I'll just get rid of this perlite. So yeah, but it doesn't do any harm, so I don't worry about it at all. So my neighbours are playing some quite loud music and the window is open because it's quite a nice day. So I don't know if you're picking up that or not. And it's not bad music, it's quite nice, quite chill music. But yeah, I don't know if you can hear that or not. Anyway, let's talk care requirements. Yeah. When it comes to light requirements, these plants, of course, like everything else, likes bright indirect light. But I would say these plants really don't like having a lot of direct sun on their leaves. I would say the ones that could tolerate it a little bit more are the more sort of thick-leaved ones, like your dual alocasias, like your dragon scale and your silver dragon. But the zebrina, for example, I would say definitely prefers to have bright indirect light. And if you do get a lot of direct sun on these leaves, you are going to get bleaching and they will just not look very healthy and happy at all. You may also notice that the leaves start to dip down as they're starting to sort of like shy away from the sun. So yeah, I would say definitely no direct sun for these ones. This one currently sits about 2 to 3 meters back from a south-facing window. And I'll be completely honest with you, my plan was to put it under a grow light, and I have had this one under a grow light before, but I just haven't got around to doing it, and it's popping off with growth at the moment. So it's obviously getting enough light to keep it happy. So I would just always just like, you know, just monitor things and see how things are going on. If your plant is popping out new growth, it's going to be happy, isn't it? And obviously if you're not getting any new growth, then maybe move it to a slightly brighter spot. When it comes to watering, obviously I mentioned before that all of mine are in semi-hydro, and that is because alocasias do like to have constant access to moisture, and that can be difficult to get right with the soil, like I mentioned in the intro to this video. So yes, if you do have your plants in soil, they're going to like more of a chunky mix. They're going to like some moisture retentive things in there, like cocoa peat and things like that. Bit some aeration to soil, lots of pumice and perlite. But yeah, for me, I've just had a much easier time with my alocasia since moving them into semi-hydro, and I haven't had any issues with rot, whereas I was having issues with rot when I had them in soil because I was struggling to get that balance right with the watering. If you do have yourself one of these or a cat, just be aware that these plants are toxic, aren't they, Bill? Luckily, my Bill here does not bother with my plants at all, has never shown any interest in them whatsoever, doesn't play with the soil, doesn't want to chew them, literally zero interest. So I'm very, very fortunate and I don't have to keep them out of his way. But if you do have a more inquisitive pet or a cat that likes to chew on leaves, these are toxic. So these plants contain something called oxalate crystals, and they can make you sick, vomiting, diarrhea, if they're consumed, but they also can be a bit of a skin irritant. So I would say that if you're cutting your alocasia, maybe removing a leaf or dealing with their corms, then I would say that to wash your hands thoroughly afterwards, because it can cause like a skin irritant. Like I have had burning on my skin before, and that's when I've forgotten to wash my hands after dealing with alocasia. So do bear that in mind, and yeah, just give your hands a good wash after dealing with them. Isn't that right, Bill? When it comes to fertilising these plants, I fertilise these plants all year round as long as they are actively growing. Which basically means if they're putting out new growth, I will be fertilising it. So I mentioned earlier that my cuprea went dormant over the winter months, so it stopped producing any new leaves for months and months. So I did stop fertilising that plant because I don't want to be giving it loads and loads of fertiliser and the plant has nothing to do with it because it's not putting out any new leaves. You going down, mate? See you later. Whereas some of my other alocasias were continuing, like this one, continuing to put out growth through the winter months, so I did continue to fertilise them. When it comes to repotting your alocasias, I would say that they do prefer to be more pot bound than to be surrounded by too much substrate. They are a little bit more prone to getting root rot, so that's why they don't want to be swimming in substrate. Something like a monstera or a philodendron, I would be less worried about potting them up into a pot that was a little bit bigger, because monstera roots grow like absolute wildfire and they will just find that new substrate and like go bananas. Whereas you can have a really quite large alocasia in a reasonably small pot and they're more than happy. So you don't need to be, these are not ones you need to be constantly sizing up all the time. They would prefer to be a little bit snug in their pot. When it comes to humidity, I think once the plant is bigger and established, like this one here, or even the bigger, even the Micholitziana, or the cuprea, or the dual alocasias, once they are a reasonable size, I would say they're absolutely fine with normal room humidity. That being said, I live in London and I would say that my house generally sits around somewhere between 50 and 60% humidity most of the year, apart from if we're having a particularly hot, dry spell where it might get a little bit lower, but I've never had to supplement with humidifiers. Or what I would say is when the plants are smaller, like this sort of size, and you're really trying to get them going, and especially when they are like this one, obviously I have in a cloche, and also when I'm growing them from corms, I do keep in the humidity either by putting them inside a glass cloche, putting them inside a little IKEA greenhouse, or somehow providing them with cover in some other way, like putting them inside another box and keeping the lid closed. Because they will benefit from higher levels of humidity when they're really trying to kickstart themselves. So yes, if the plant is small or you're propagating, I would 100% add some extra step for humidity, but once the plant is more established, they're absolutely fine in normal room humidity. To finish off, 3 things that I think will absolutely change your alocasia care routine is 1, move them out of soil if you're struggling and move them into semi-hydro. It is honestly a game changer, and they tend to be much happier in there because the health of your plants is the health of the root system is the health of the plants, and their root systems really do suit semi-hydro. So I would say absolutely, if you're not already using semi-hydro, then that is definitely something to consider. The second thing I would say, if your alocasia is struggling with root rot or whatever it might be, then get it out of whatever substrate it's in and get it into perlite. This rather sad looking thing is my mum's Alocasia zebrina, and this plant used to look really big and beautiful, and basically over the winter months when she got the Christmas tree into the house, she moved this away from the window and into a darker spot, but she kept altering it the same way that she was when it was in a brighter spot, and obviously the plant got root rot. So I got it out of the soil and into perlite, and you can see there's lots of new healthy roots there growing there now. And we have good news, because finally, after quite a few months, we have a new leaf coming in here and a new leaf coming in here. So really excited about that. So yeah, if your alocasia are struggling, get it out of the substrate that it's in, get it into perlite, keep this perlite damp but not sitting in water. So just like give it a little bit of water every few days to keep it damp. And then once the plant is happy and putting out, regular growth again, I would then transfer it back to your potting medium of choice. But like I say, I always find these ones are much happier in semi-hydro. You can also completely keep it in perlite. You just need to make sure that you are fertilizing it, because there are no nutrients in perlite like there would be in soil. So you do need to be providing it with a fertilizer to give it some food and some nutrients. But yeah, really happy that this one's making a bit of a comeback. So yes, if your alocasia is struggling, get it into perlite. And the last thing I would say is make sure you're keeping those leaves clean. And then, because pests can take your plants down very quickly, and obviously we grow these plants for this beautiful foliage, and spider mites and thrips will take your plant down like that, and suddenly you'll have very sad looking leaves with lots of marks. and it's just really heartbreaking to see. So I would definitely say get it in the shower regularly and give it a good shower. Obviously you want to be doing that when your plant already needs the water, because you don't want to be overwatering your plant. But get it in the shower, or just clean the leaves with a dry microfiber cloth, or using literally water, or you can use a product like SB Plant Invigorator, which cleans your leaves but also has something to prevent spider mites as well. So yeah, I'll link that down below as well. And those are my 3 main tips for keeping your alocasias happy. So that's the end of the video today. I hope you found this video helpful. If you do have any alocasia questions, or you're struggling with yours in any way, please drop me a comment below and I'll be happy to answer it as best that I can. And thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.